The following video is intended for adult collectors. This is not a kid's toy channel. I made Sweet Tooth from Twisted Metal out of Lego. As of recently, I've found myself falling more and more in love with Twisted Metal. It started with my dad showing me Twisted Metal Head On. That's the game that he had on the PlayStation 2. I've only ever played Twisted Metal Head On Super Twisted Edition, or whatever exactly it was called. But I've been doing a lot of research into the games, and they have caught my interest greatly. And so I've decided to recreate one of my favorite characters from the games, being Sweet Tooth, also known as Needles Kane. I was originally planning to do some sort of Halloween video, but those plans kind of fell through. And Twisted Metal, it's kind of scary and kind of Halloween-esque, so I guess consider this the Halloween special or something. Throughout the games, Sweet Tooth has had many different depictions, but his most recent depictions show him as this serial killer that wears a clown mask and has been cursed with flaming hair and wearing like baggy white pants with straps over his chest. And so I've decided to go with that version of him because it's honestly just the best version of him. Like, I highly doubt anyone's going to say that the Twisted Metal 4 version of Sweet Tooth is the superior version of him. Everyone's going with Twisted Metal Black. Just a 360 spin of the whole model. Here's the back. It's kind of like flattened off, and I use this whole chest plate piece to do the back. And he's got this very bulky, chubby aesthetic. Now, when I was building this guy, I was actually worried the head was going to be too big for the body. But once I finished it, he ended up being like a lot bigger than I was anticipating. Kind of outsizing a lot of my other characters. Disassembling this figure a little bit just to show a little bit of how the inside works. Now, I do not use Technic or Bionicle much at all. I've been educating myself a little more on how that spectrum of Lego works, but traditionally I don't build much with it. I'm sure a lot of Bionicle professionals can say that a lot of the techniques in here are very primitive and beginner level, because even me, who doesn't know much about what I'm doing, can tell that a lot of these techniques are really, really poor, and the figure does kind of struggle to hold together in some spots. However, it does still stay together somewhat pretty well. The back, I like the way that all these pieces kind of slide together, and removing this just to show a little more of what the inside looks like. And it is like all sorts of kind of weird connections going in all sorts of different directions, and Technic is a lot more complicated than normal bricks, so when you're stepping into a world that you've never really been in, it's hard to know where to start. Inside the legs, you might notice that I have like kind of this double joint inside of it. That's because the angle that I was working with these ball joint connections, I still wanted the legs to be posable, so I added this kind of double joint in order to allow me to kind of push forward like that and then kind of like that backwards like that, so I get a little more range out of it. But probably my favorite part has to be the belly that I made for him. I just used these two big kind of like round bits and like a couple other round pieces to kind of depict the belly, and then these pieces to be the straps that go around his chest and stuff. That just kind of clicks in the front right here. And then these two pieces kind of just wrap around the belly to kind of give it more of that muscular aesthetic. And then on top of all this, to kind of complete it, I just take this like normal chest piece and it just kind of goes onto that little stud right there. In order to attach the neck, as you can see, there's this kind of little connection right here, which it does actually kind of come off pretty easily. It's easier to attach it when you remove the entire kind of ball joint assembly and then just slide it back in. And then when I was building the head, I kind of ended up with this stump that didn't really easily allow me to connect any sort of ball joint to it. So I kind of had to do this weird way where I kind of just tuck the ball joint behind. And while yes, this does look aesthetically nice, it is not structurally sound whatsoever. Because if you ever wanted to turn the head, and you kind of do it a little too like aggressively, it will eventually just fall off. So I kind of have to hold my hand on the back of the neck in order to prevent the head from falling off. Speaking of the head, this is probably my favorite part of the mock and the most important part of the mock, because this is the part that people are going to look at. As you can see, the neck kind of like rounds into the head at the bottom, and all sorts of different like curved pieces to allow the head to not only move but also look natural from most angles. I kind of went with the Twisted Metal 2012 depiction where he's got like the kind of eye patch golf ball thing, like when his eye gets stabbed out. And the other eye, it's hard to tell, but if you look closely, there is like a little eye in there. It kind of follows you a little bit. It's hard to see, but it is there, and once you notice it, it doesn't really go away. I used all sorts of different curved pieces to represent like the smile and the kind of eyebrows and stuff, and it looks really nice. They got the little like orange tufts of hair on the sides. And then, of course, the most important part is the flaming head. And this is kind of a combination of just many different flame pieces. A mixture of these kind of little ones, the kind of curved outward ones, the big curved outward ones, and then like the large flame pieces, and even some of these more like the solid yellow flame pieces. There's a lot of different pieces going on in here to kind of complete the head. In order to attach all the flame pieces, I use a lot of these kind of 1x3 round plates here. I only have them in black. However, it's actually, I can use this to my advantage because the mask has these black straps that kind of wrap around the front. So those kind of just blend in as part of the mask, and it actually kind of adds to the detail. When I was building the head, I actually had plans to make the mask swappable with other mask designs that kind of depict him in like different iterations, because his makeup does kind of change a little bit. But with the intricacy of the head in order to attach the mask at like all the different angles and all the flame pieces, like there wasn't really much room to allow for the mask to pop off easily, so unfortunately it is kind of sealed to his face. And also, despite his clunkiness, he actually is fairly well articulated. The arms, the shoulders, elbows are ball joints, and the wrist is kind of this double ball joint, which is a Bionicle ball joint into a Mixel ball joint, so it allows for like extra range. His hands are also very well detailed and articulated. Each finger has its own individual joint, and the thumb and pointer finger can kind of like do this thing where like the thumb can kind of go inward and the pointer can kind of come out a little bit to allow for even more range. And also, if you notice, there's a hole to allow for him to hold accessories, such as his knife, which just sticks in there with a pin connection. And then for the legs, they're also kind of double jointed, where we have this outward and then like the kind of ankle. And it does look weird at some angles the way it's built. However, that's kind of just to make it look more like a boot. Even though he is posable, I didn't really design him to be articulated. The way I built him, he's really not sturdy enough to hold himself up, so any pose you put him in, he's most likely going to fall down. Which is why throughout the video, he's kind of just been in this kind of standing up pose. And also, you can't have Sweet Tooth without Crazy Harold the Wacky Lunch Sack. Yes, I created Crazy Harold the Wacky Lunch Sack in Lego as well, to go with Sweet Tooth. He can hold Crazy Harold just like so. He's in there pretty well. And that is Sweet Tooth in his entirety.